Hello, and welcome to the Mr. 50mm YouTube channel. For this video, I'm going to try a new format. I wanted to try to get a few more videos out, but the normal way that I record and do these videos kind of takes a lot of writing and planning. So, for these videos, I'm going to try a less formal kind of ramble. So, I'll be picking a couple topics, and I'm just going to ramble about them. For today's topics, we're going to talk about the Panasonic GH4, and the Sony A390. We'll go over the alpha mount, the interesting innovations of the A300 series, or I guess that generation of Sony cameras, and why ergonomics matter. Let's get into it. Panasonic GH4. So why are we talking about this? Well, because currently this video is being shot on a GH4. I'm using the GH4 with the Panasonic 14mm f2.5, and I ended up getting this camera because I wanted a second 4K shooter as a camera too. Now, that being said, I do realize I mainly just shoot talking heads, my head, so I don't really know why I thought I needed a second camera. But here we are, I've got one. And it seems to look like it's doing pretty good, at least on the tilty flippy outy screen that I'm looking at here. It's actually a little more convenient than the A7 III, which does not have a tilty flippy outy screen, and I usually end up resorting to using my smartphone to pair with the camera and then look and compose on there. But this seems to be quite solid. Hopefully the footage looks good too. It should. I've seen a couple reviews saying that the 4K out of the GH4 is quite solid, and I don't have a reason to believe that they're not wrong. But yeah, one of the reasons, the other reasons why I bought the GH4 was that I just generally was curious about shooting video on Micro Four Thirds, aside from just wanting a camera too, and one of my video ideas was to see whether or not the GH4 might be the best value budget option for getting into 4K video. And I'm not sure if I'll do that one, mainly because I'm not really a videographer. I'm kind of just hitting the record, setting up the tracking and all that stuff, and kind of pressing go. I'm not really grading stuff. We're doing a lot of advanced photo thingies, so I might not be the best person to talk about that, but maybe I'll do it from a YouTuber's perspective. Who knows? I do want to mention, though, that right now I am recording this using the GH4's AF tracking thingy, and it does appear to be getting my talking head pretty well. I'm swooshing around. I'll go close. Now I'll go back. Doesn't seem to be too bad. That being said, I'm not throwing anything really weird at it, and most of my lights are illuminating me, so this should be fairly easy for a camera to do, and I am shooting effectively on a 14mm, so focusing isn't, the depth is fairly chunky, so maybe I don't have a great example of or a great test for how this will be. But yeah, so that's my little talk on the GH4. In short, I bought it because it's cheap. It's my camera too, and I was curious. Let me know what you think of the content coming out of the camera. Does it look alright? Does it look bad? I don't know. But yeah. So I just wanted to point out one last thing, especially just with the Panasonic GH4 shooting. So of all the random camera remote shooting software that I've used, I think at the moment Panasonic's app for Android is the best app that I've used thus far for any camera system. That is, I think I've used the Canon one. I thought initially that was not bad. Used the Sony one. That is kind of dog water. I've used the Fujifilm one. It was alright. I think this Panasonic app is by far one of the nicest experiences. And I think just, for some, vlogging points, like that app wins. It is, it's making this experience quite a bit less poopy, and it's actually, it responds fast. You can do quite a bit of controls on it, and like, at the moment when I'm looking at it, the latency is pretty good. It looks pretty similar to what I'm getting on the actual camera display. So, yeah, kudos to you, Panasonic. This is a solid app. That's all I got. All right. So now we're going to talk about the Sony A390. This is a weird DSLR. So I picked this up a couple weeks ago, well, a week ago, because it was super cheap. It was super cheap, and I thought this might be a good way to review a relatively high pixel density CCD. The A390 is equipped with Sony's 14 megapixel CCD, which is, I think, one of the highest pixel densities for an APS-C size camera, well, sensor size camera. I think the only ones that might be higher are the Phase 1, like 80 megapixel digital backs. But I think even then, if you do the math on the pixel pitch, the A390 might actually be higher, just because smaller sensor size and all the pixels jammed in that small size. The Phase 1 80 megapixel, or I think 80 megapixel unit is it is a full frame medium format, so almost 645. It's quite large. So I think when you look at densities, it is a little less than the Sony here. But yeah, so I got it to explore the high pixel density CCD, and of course it was cheap. A lot of these older Sony DSLRs are cheap, and it's kind of a nice thing, and it kind of feels like it should be cheap because they're not that good. I think the sensors themselves seem to be fine, and the ones that are older have more Konica Minolta than Sony design language at the time, which is good because this is early Sony camera days, or Sony serious camera days, and these controls suck. They're not very good. On this particular one, the grip is a little, like, it's just an awkward size. It's not super small, but it's not comfortably big. I think the A380 had a really small one, so they embiggened this one a bit to make it more comfortable. But the A350, which is the first version of the 300 series, had like a grip that was fairly big. But I guess maybe people thought it was too big, so they made it really, really small and overcorrected. And now for this 390, it is a little better, but it's still not very good. Like my hand doesn't fit that well on it. But on the plus side, on this camera, they did make an attempt to kind of jam a lot of controls on one side so you can one hand operate. But yeah, the feel is just not very good. And there's a bunch of weird stuff going on with the camera. Like buttons are, like, doesn't have a lot of buttons where you could have more things to make the operation a little smoother. Like I think as the model numbers went around, they started just changing stuff willy-nilly to see what would stick. And a lot of the changes happen to be like button removals. So the top plate, you can see, doesn't really have a great deal of buttonage. You got your, like, a really weird one, like smart teleconverter, which was just digital zoom. And this is like an awful way to waste a button. The one that makes sense is this one. That's your exposure comp. That makes sense. And then, like, you don't really get too much on the back, right? You got a function button, you got your D-pad / multi-function thingy, playback and delete. So, like, there was some sense, but, like, it could have had another button or two. Your mode dials on the other side, you got your PASMs and whatnot, so it's all good. And your menu button is there as well, which kind of makes sense. But overall, it's not that comfortable to use. But on the plus side, these are, like, this era of camera, DSLR, super cheap. Like, this was not the first one I saw that week that was $80. There was another one that was $80. It actually had a 2-lens kit, and it sold before I could send a message. So I was like, it's fine. I picked up this one instead. And even though, your ergonomics are quite bad, there's a reason why you might want to pick one of these up. And that's to get into the Minolta A mount or Sony A mount system, because these lenses, a lot of them are spectacular. This is the 100mm macro. It's not what came with this camera. It's just one that I had. It's superb. I also have the 50 macro, also great, and the 50 1.4, excellent lens. I got that. The one I got is from Sony, but it's a rebadged Minolta one, so whatever. And I got a couple other ones. You know, the 50 1.7, 28 2.8, a couple telephotos, and they're all fairly good lenses. I know there's some stinkers as well, but overall there was quite a lot of, you know, old Minolta glass that's just really nice and super cheap. So, you know, a win-win. I think like my 51.4 I got for like $100, taxes in and shipped to my door. So that was quite nice. I think that was quite a good deal. But even a regular deal, it's like fairly reasonable price. So yeah, the system is dead, right? And kind of explains why the lenses are cheap, but they're still quite good. And I know if you have A-mount lenses, you can buy an adapter to use it on, you know, newer Sony cameras. And there's a whole variety of adapters that, you know, support things from AF using the motor screw type motor, because these lenses don't have a built-in motor. It's got the body-based motor. But so yeah, there's a series of adapters that, you know, have the motor in it, so you can use autofocus. There's some that don't, but you'd still, you know, at least mount it on the camera and you get your electronic contacts to do stuff. But yeah, the glass is pretty great and pretty cheap. So reasons to get into the A-mount system are still, you know, they're valid. We'll probably do a video on that later. Another thing, though, like the last thing I want to talk about for this camera, it's got some weird innovations. I mean, kind of. So this camera has live view, and it's like an early version of it. And the way that it does it, it's not actually unique to Sony. Olympus did a similar thing, but basically this camera has two sensors. There's a secondary CCD or CMOS or whatever somewhere in the prism, I believe above the viewfinder there, and it is able to give you live view. And the way that it does that on this particular camera is that the penta mirror is a set of mirrors, and one of the mirrors goes from this position and tilts back, and that alters the image path to go up into the secondary sensor instead of through your eye peepers. We'll have a quick look, and like I figured out that this switch is a mechanical linkage to the actual mirror tilty thingy. So you slide it forward and you get live view. Ooh. And it's literally just looking through the viewfinder. So in doing that, you get rapid AF through the phase detect module on the camera. You know, instead of using, at the time, real slow, real poopy contrast to detect AF. So it's a weird compromise for the live view systems of the day. It was fairly interesting. I think the other camera company that did it a little earlier was Olympus. Their E330 had a very similar system, and I think the Panasonic L1 did a similar thing with the two sensors. Of course, they did it using a pole finder instead of a pentamirror thingy, but same idea. So it's a neat way to get your live view and your autofocus. And I think the logic behind this for Sony was, you know, these cameras are aimed at like the consumer tier, and like a lot of them at the time were not that comfortable using the OVF. So, you know, why not give them a relatively smooth EVF experience, or sorry, live view experience, and you know, in doing that, hopefully they could capture market share. And I think it's like actually a pretty neat system because because you're using that phase detect, it is fairly fast, but you do get some limitations. Like that second sensor is not going to give you a perfect representation of the exposure you're getting, and like it does kind of eat real estate in your optical finder. This particular camera was known for having a hella tiny tunnely viewfinder, And that is probably because there's a sensor sitting on the top there taking up valuable real estate. So it is not a particularly good finder. But, it is there. And, these systems were the precursor to Sony using their SLT technology, which eventually developed into, your actual full-on mirrorless stuff. So this was like, first Sony's baby steps, I think. But yeah, overall, weird camera, bad ergonomics, interesting innovations, and cheap way to get high density-ish CCD. So, I think that's all I got for this video. What do you think about these little rambly things? I think I'm going to try to keep doing these and talk about some other things that may or may not eventually come into, fuller, longer videos. We'll see how that goes. This has been, for me, fairly casual and easy to set up. And, also it's helping me to hopefully stare at the camera a little more. Because I know sometimes I don't do that often. And I think this time I was kind of fidgeting and playing with this. So I wasn't always looking at it. But I think hopefully better than before. Plus, I actually have the tilty flippy to look at for the GH4, which is kind of making me do it more because I'm kind of more aware of how I look. So, this might work out. But yeah, let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time. Bye.